As far as the whales and the right whales and so forth, and the new restrictions on closures and modifying our gear to for breakaways and so forth is it all seems to be helping. They're talking about buoyless gear and so forth, which I'm not in favor of. I think that the closures and not letting us, when they have the closures and not being able to fish at that time makes more sense, because I think the technology isn't there yet for buoyless fishing.
So the pressure to save right whales is coming down hard on the fishing industry. And the consequence of that, of course, is that we are seeking some solutions to the fishing industry's problem that they've visited to right whales. And that has been many different sorts of things, but the only one that seems to hold a lot of hope, as difficult as it is ropeless fishing, fishing without the traditional ropes leading to the surface and between traps.
I mean, you're looking at piles of rope here that is all been modified from 15 years ago or 20 years ago. This would have all been floating rope, and now it's all sinking, and there's buoy lines that have weak links in them and markings and so forth for whales. So we do everything we can to comply and avoid any entanglements. And if there is entanglements, they all have the breakaways and so forth on them. So we don't want to catch them, and I don't want to kill a whale. I think they're pretty awesome animals.
So addressing the human causes, they are what we call often industrial causes of mortality, basically fishing activity and shipping. Ships striking whales, and fishing activities usually catching them in their ropes or wires or whatever. There are many details as to what specific kinds of fishing and shipping do that, but generally it's those two big causes of mortality.
This buoyless fishing might be okay in the future, but at the moment it doesn't make financial sense with the equipment that's involved in it.
I think the initial efforts for ropeless are going to require subsidies. More than subsidies, the federal government is probably going to have to find ways of buying most of the new gear that comes in. Whether that continues once ropeless fishing becomes widespread. And then there are a bunch of other problems with it beyond the technology. One of the big problems with ropeless fishing is that there will no longer be marks at the surface of the sea indicating where their gear is. And on the one hand, that means that the fisherman going out offshore will have to make sure he doesn't drop his gear on other people's gear. And in an equally big problem, other fishing methods are which depend on seeing buoys at the surface to avoid the gear on the bottom. Those operations like otter trawls, what we call dragging, the bottom will drag right through the middle of traps and mess everything up.
You put something on the bottom, now you have to have, what about the next guy? He's not going to know it's there, or other fisheries like fish draggers or scallopers that want to fish in an area and there's buoy gear down there that they end up catching because they don't know it's there, and all of a sudden they've got problems because they get all this tangled up gear that they're messing with on a boat that they didn't even know was there before it was all well marked. Most fishermen are going to avoid other people's gear if they see it.
Well, I think the fishing community is in a tough position. They do not want whales to get tangled up in their gear. There's no gain for them, and now these days there's a huge loss. The approach taken to cut down on mortalities in ships, but especially in fishing, is to close areas to those activities. And that's no help to the fishermen.
I think that with the work we've done, there's been less entanglements locally than there used to be. A lot of the problems I've had with the whales have been ships or bigger lobster gear or sport boats that have hit them while they're traveling, traveling high speeds. And I think for the most part, fishermen have done the best they can to avoid interaction with the whales. We're in a winter closure right now for 4 months to try to avoid that.
Given the problems that fishermen confront, all of the conservationists and should be all of the fishermen are looking for a solution to the entanglement of large animals, particularly right whales, in fishing gear. And that possible solution, which is ropeless fishing, seems to be the one that we all ought to put our weight behind. That said, it changes the methods used by fishermen considerably. It will, but it also turns out that it probably is not something that's going to have a big impact in the very near future because it's still under development and it's not a simple problem.
I think, to try to go out and fish for a day and for me, to try to go on a computer and try to push a button to get the buoy to pop up and then repack this thing to reset the gear is a little much for me right at the moment. Yeah, it would be like me telling you if you're going to go do your job, but it's going to take you twice as long or 3 times as long to do the same job you did before. Now all of a sudden we have to put all our gear on some type of map so everybody can see where your gear is. And in fishing, some of the edges is to be able to find a new spot or try something new, and then all of a sudden now that's all just common information.